News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow.
Karen, the jump in futures comes as the U.S. and the European Union have agreed to a deal that will see 15% tariffs on most EU imports into the U.S. The deal staves off an escalation in hostilities in the world's biggest trading relationship, but many details still need to be ironed out. President Trump announced the deal alongside European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen during the president's trip to Scotland.
We've reached a deal. It's a good deal for everybody, I believe. And I think you were saying this is probably the biggest deal ever reached in any capacity, trade or beyond trade.
It is.
It's a giant deal with lots of countries.
And Bloomberg's Lizzie Burden is covering the president's trip. She has more from Turnberry, Scotland.
Ursula von der Leyen came to Donald Trump's golf resort of Turnberry and she got her hole in one. A tariff war averted between the US and the EU. This 15% US tariff agreed on most EU goods. Now, that is higher than the other way round. But of course, von der Leyen acknowledged that there's a need to redress the imbalance in US-EU trade, much, by the way, to the annoyance of many European industry lobby groups. But look, this 15% tariff is all-inclusive, so that means Donald Trump can't be adding extra levies when it comes to chips and drugs and cars. And our calculations at Bloomberg Economics suggest that the effective average tariff rate would have been 18% from the US on the EU from Friday, the August the 1st tariff deadline, were it not for this deal.
And that's Bloomberg's Lizzie Burden reporting from Scotland, where President Trump will meet with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer later today. The British leader will be looking to finalize his trade deal with the U.S. and push for a lasting ceasefire in Gaza.
And on top of that, Karen, U.S. and Chinese officials are meeting in Sweden today to extend their trade truce beyond August 12th. This will be the third meeting in less than 3 months for Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. Bloomberg's Oliver Crook is in Stockholm covering that meeting.
The expectations will be somewhat more muted than what we got in Scotland with the EU, which was, amounted to the beginning of a framework of a comprehensive deal between the EU and the United States. This is really just an ability and an endeavor to kick the can a little bit further down the road. Because if just to remind everybody where we are on the U.S.-China tariffs, they were at 125%. They were then reduced now to the level that they rest at, which is 30%. But that trade truce was basically set to run out on August the 12th, which is, as we know, just about a week and a half away from there. This is an opportunity for them to begin to discuss some of the main sort of issues to get a full deal, but really also to extend that truce for another likely 90 days.
Bloomberg's Oliver Crook says any breakthrough today could help set the stage for President Trump to meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping later this year.
Nathan, questions about the Jeffrey Epstein case are following President Trump on his trip. The president was asked whether he rushed a deal with the EU to draw attention away from the matter.
Oh, you got to be kidding with that. No, had nothing to do with it. Only you would think that.
But back in Washington, a pair of lawmakers have come together on a bill that would force the House to vote on releasing more documents about the pedophile financier. Here's Republican Thomas Massey.
It would force a full release of the files. It has the force of law. It's not a subpoena. It's not a pretty please, would you release the files? It's the force of law. And it's got protections to redact victims' names and to prevent, release of child pornography.
And Democrat Ro Khanna.
Pam Bondi says there's a client list, and she says, no, it's just a file. She's going to release them. I didn't criticize them at all those first few months. But when they refused to release the files, when they said there's nothing more to see, that's when we said transparency demands the full release of the files.
Congress members Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey appeared on ABC's this week, which can be heard every Sunday on Bloomberg Radio.
Turning to the economy now, Karen, 2 key events await investors this week. On Wednesday, we get the Fed rate decision, and 2 days after that, the July jobs report. Here's a preview from Bloomberg's Michael McKee.
It's a little like having dessert first. The Fed meets on interest rates Wednesday, not expected to change anything. Inflation is rising a little, but Trump's import tax increases haven't really hit the economy yet. Investors are hoping the central bank will hint at a move in September. That will depend on the data, of course. If job growth weakens further or unemployment rises further, that could prompt a rate cut. Economists are forecasting both happen during July. But July's jobs report isn't due until Friday after the Fed meets. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Mike, thank you. It's also a busy week on the earnings front for tech giants. We'll lead the way. We get a preview with Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta platforms will be among this week's most closely watched, with AI and tariffs a major focus. John Stoltzfus is chief investment strategist at Oppenheimer.
So, we think this is so far so good. That's the remarkable thing. And we like our call where it is in terms of being bullish, but at the same time recognizing that there's still some risk within this tariff regime and where it arrives at.
That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.